San Francisco de Quito, the capital of Ecuador, sits at over 9,000 feet above sea level. Quito's volcanic peaks straddle the equator, the invisible line around the center of the earth after which this South American country was named. Located high in the Andes, on the bulge of the equatorial line, Quito is the closest national capital to the sun. Fitting for a place at the intersection of two hemispheres, there is symmetry everywhere you look. As a meeting point between two equal halves, Quito is all about balance. Just like the Earth, it's intersected by an imaginary line, separating the UNESCO-protected Old Town from the trendy New Town, mirroring the past with the present. To see both halves at once, take the gondola up the Pichincha volcano. On these slopes, a historic battle took place that resulted in Quito's liberation from Spain in 1822. Declaring victory was independence leader Antonio José de Sucre, whose statue stands far below in front of the Santo Domingo Church. In the Metropolitan Cathedral, facing Independence Square, you can visit Sucre's tomb. Despite being one of the oldest cathedrals in South America, the lofty building still impresses anyone who enters its cool interior. Many artworks incorporate local interpretations of the Bible, such as the guinea pig served for the Last Supper. The cathedral's blend of indigenous, European, and Arabic styles became known as the Quito School of Art. And this style can also be found in the nearby Basilica de la Merced, which, among other historic treasures, has an impressive cloister library. Back on the Plaza de la Independencia, a soaring monument shows the national emblem, the condor, symbolically breaking the chains of oppression from Spain, the lion. This generous public space is also known as the Plaza Grande, and, as the civic heart of the city, houses the Municipal Palace and the Presidential Palace. In between stands the former Archbishop's Palace, now a cultural center and restaurant. Take a seat on a patio balcony to sample authentic Ecuadorian food, such as a hearty potato soup and deep-fried plantains with cheese. After lunch, take a taxi to Chimbia Park, on a hill just to the east. Its contemporary cultural center is wonderful, but the main attraction here is the view. Below, the Basilica of the National Vow offers a peaceful haven to everyone who steps inside. The sunlight filters in through the stained glass windows, creating an ethereal space. Walk across the cathedral's spine at roof level to climb its highest tower for unforgettable views of Panecillo Hill and its winged statue of Mary. The artwork was inspired by Quito's Madonna, a precious statue kept safe in the church on the Plaza de San Francisco. This square was an important marketplace in pre-Inca times, and in its underground passageways, you can still buy local artifacts. To lure the sun-worshipping locals to their churches, the Spanish depicted sun motifs on the ceilings, as is clearly visible in the Church of the Society of Jesus just to the south. With its dazzling interior and volcanic stone facade, this truly is one of the continent's finest. A good place to end your tour of the Old Town is the nearby ancient thoroughfare, Calle La Ronda. Transport yourself back to the 21st century in Quito's New Town, known locally as La Mariscal. The area around Plaza del Quinde is an energetic jumble of colors and styles, and so is the nearby craft market. Nearby, the bohemian Guapulo neighborhood clings to the mountain slopes, providing a glimpse of what lies beyond. Just to the north, in the valley of Lulumbamba, you can stand in two hemispheres at the same time. The carved stone heads leading up to the Mitad del Mundo monument represent the French scientists who, almost 3 centuries ago, declared this to be the equator. Modern technology shows this is not the case, but it's still a popular attraction. The Intiñan Solar Museum, less than 800 feet away, lays claim to be on the real equatorial line. The entertaining experiments aim to show a change in the pull of gravity, although in reality, the effect is too minute to observe with the naked eye. The shrunken head on display here, however, is anything but a trick. It's a war relic of the tribal Shuar people. Many of Ecuador's surviving indigenous people still live off the land. This rural region may be poor, but its volcanic landscape is extremely fertile and rich in biodiversity. A prime example is the Pululawa Geobotanical Reserve, one of South America's first national parks and one of the largest volcanic craters in the world. Pululawa is Quechua for cloud of water, and the caldera is often shrouded in mist. Of similar mystical appeal is the Maquipucuna Cloud Forest Reserve, a lush paradise for hummingbirds. Some of these tiny birds have adapted to the high-altitude prairie of the nearby Cotopaxi National Park, finding nectar on the cliffs of its highly active volcano. Despite volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, and power struggles, Quito has always recovered its equilibrium and today continues to shine. In order to create harmony, we don't always have to choose between tradition and progress or spirituality and science. Come take a journey to the middle of the world and find wonder and wisdom in Quito. Uruguay is dwarfed by Brazil and Argentina, but this tiny South American country is emerging from the cool shadows cast by its giant neighbors. The capital, Montevideo, is warming up to becoming one of the continent's favorite destinations. With its grassy plains and flat coastline, Uruguay naturally keeps a low profile. It's an unhurried place where colonial architecture and modern development balance each other out with ease. In between the high-rises of the capital, Montevideo, stately mansions have been restored to their former glory and now house theaters, museums, and opulent hotels. Although Uruguay seems in no rush to be discovered, the news about its revival is spreading fast. In the past few decades, Montevideo has made a name for itself as one of the most livable cities in South America, with advanced social policies and free education for all. Add to that a warm, temperate climate, pleasant sea breezes, and miles of beach boulevards, and you'll understand why this peaceful city was bound to get noticed. From Montevideo's pointy telecommunications tower in the harbor, you can see the lone hill that first gave away Uruguay's presence some 500 years ago. Some say a Portuguese explorer sailed by and called out, "Montevideo, I see a hill," while others believe it was the Spanish who named the city. With the Portuguese claiming the land for Brazil and the Spanish eager to expand Argentina, both nations hurried to forge strategic ports and fortresses. This rivalry resulted in a tug-of-war that lasted for over 3 centuries, with Uruguay slipping into and out of the grips of Argentina and Brazil. The Uruguayans never fully surrendered to either side, and with England as referee, became independent in 1825. In the Plaza Independencia in the city center, visit the mausoleum for the revolutionary hero José Artigas, who gave up his own freedom for the liberty of his country. Above the ground, his statue faces the eclectic design of the Palacio Salvo. A century ago, this skyscraper was the tallest on the continent, and it's still a national symbol of pride today. In the nearby Plaza Matriz, the city's oldest square, the 18th century Metropolitan Cathedral also reaches for the skies. Step inside to enjoy a moment of quiet contemplation under its majestic roof. While this Roman Catholic church is still the focal point of the old town, the multicultural Montevideanos are of many different faiths. With Portuguese and Spanish blood running through their veins, it's unsurprising that soccer has united the locals like no religion ever could. Sports rivalries aside, the Uruguayans live in harmony with their Argentinian and Brazilian neighbors and were quick to embrace the best of their architecture, hospitality, and culture. Ever since colonial times, Carnival has been just as important to Montevideo as it is to Rio de Janeiro. Just like in Brazil, it all started with African slaves who would dress up and parade in the streets for Harvest Fest. And in the Uruguayan capital, you can also get a taste of Brazil's vibrant beach culture. Take a little vacation from exploring the city and join the locals for a refreshing swim or fun game on De Los Pocitos Beach. Watch closely and you'll see groups of friends sharing yerba mate, a tea poured from a flask into calabash gourds with silver straws, a tradition they share with the Argentinians. For the final proof that Uruguay combines the best of both worlds, join the locals for lunch in the Mercado del Puerto. From the irresistible barbecue smells coming from under its wrought iron roof, it's clear that Uruguayans are just as passionate about parrilla as the Argentinians are. First, take your pick from cuts of homegrown beef or lamb at a market stall, and then have the experts grill it for you on the spot. One of the city's most loved assets is its 19-mile-long promenade, La Rambla. As you follow it along from the old town to the outer suburbs, the walkway changes names often, but never its appeal. Enjoy the community atmosphere in the late afternoon when office workers and students spill out of the city to gather here for sunset. As they say, it's often the journey that teaches you the most about your destination. So leave Montevideo behind for a little road trip and soak up some history along the way. A great place to start is Colonia del Sacramento, just a few hours to the west of Montevideo by car. Enter the riverside settlement over the drawbridge of the Portón de Campo, the impressive city gate. Wander Colonia's cobblestoned, tree-lined streets to take in the simple beauty of days gone by. For lunch, find a table at an alfresco seafood restaurant or take a seat in Colonia's popular drugstore cafe. The city's most iconic landmark is its idyllic lighthouse, set atop the ruins of a 17th century convent. Make your way up to its lantern room and look out over the town and over the water towards Buenos Aires. Basking in the last rays of the day, the colonial charm of this little peninsula becomes even more authentic in the late afternoon. Hard as it may be to leave such a dreamy place behind, it's time to enjoy some of the country's historic beach resorts. Take a road trip along the coastal towns to the east of Montevideo for a chance to really get off the beaten track. Piriápolis is a local favorite, with nice beaches and great coastal views from its hilltop San Antonio temple. While there, view the castle of Piria, the opulent mansion of a rich local who founded the city in 1890. From Piriápolis, it's a few hours by car to La Paloma, another 19th century beach resort centered on its eye-catching lighthouse on the Cabo de Santa Maria Peninsula. Another recommended stopover on your way to Uruguay's east coast is Punta Ballena. The small peninsula is home to Casa Pueblo, one of South America's most awe-inspiring hotels. Local artist Carlos Paez Villaró, who created it as his workshop and living space, was inspired by the way local hornero birds shape their nest. After his death, his life's work became a museum, and the artistic rooms are rented out to guests. When you reach the lighthouse of Punta del Este, you've arrived at the easternmost point of the inlet, where the Silver River meets the Atlantic Ocean. Punta del Este is one of those resort towns that reaches out to those who love the simple pleasures in life. As with any journey, it's often the little things that stay with you the most. Although Uruguay may be small, its big heart and relaxing vibe create a lifetime of memories. Every time you feel a sea breeze, get a whiff of a smoking grill, or see the shimmering outline of a setting sun, you will think of Uruguay and smile. Fly to the highlands in the heart of Brazil to see the country's soaring capital, a groundbreaking example of futuristic urban planning. With a city center shaped like a bird in flight, Brasilia was designed to be viewed from above. Come and explore this inspirational hub of cutting-edge architecture. Brasilia is a daring example of new beginnings and innovative designs. Built from the ground up as the new capital of Brazil, it is the country's pathway to the future. In 1956, President Kubitschek set out to transform this once sparsely populated central plateau into an urban utopia. It took him less than 5 years, an achievement that made him a national hero. Brasilia was such a remarkable feat of rapid development that it's now classified as a World Heritage Site. You can look at Brasilia as a giant work of installation art, with its curving lines, its abstract shapes, and its symmetrical layout. The whole city was shaped around the wide-open space of the Praça dos Três Poderes. Admire the facade of the Planalto Palace, the seat of government. This perfect example of modernism was designed by Oscar Niemeyer. The prolific Brazilian architect dreamt up a wealth of elegant buildings for the new city. Many of his designs seem to delicately balance on the surface of the earth. The architect loved free-flowing structures and, in his own words, tried to push the potential of concrete to its limits. The result is both functional and exciting. You'll find that there is a harmony in every element of the city, from its layout to the architecture of its official buildings. Take the monumental axis. Its avenues run parallel, creating order, But the space is filled with the most contrasting shapes imaginable, like an abstract painting on this once blank canvas. The energy of Niemayer's creations comes pouring out of the Ministry of Justice, flows past the National Museum, and comes right through the huge Itamaraty Palace. Squint your eyes and you can almost see this energy spiral upwards in the bright halls of the National Theater. Finally, it manages to ignite the national pride in the pantheon of the fatherland and freedom. Note how the TV tower creates the perfect counterpoint for the Twin Towers and bowl of the National Congress, and the shape of the National Museum stands in stark contrast to the Metropolitan Cathedral next door. Stare up at its unusual bell tower and then step inside to see the angels glide down from the heavens above. You can see why Niemeyer received architecture's highest award for this heavenly design. With 2.8 million people, Brasilia is a bustling city, and it's best to make your way around by taxi or rental car. You can escape the crowds in the Don Bosco Sanctuary. Bosco was an Italian saint who, all the way back in the 19th century, had already predicted a futuristic city in this part of the New World, just like the one that Niemeyer created. Oscar Niemeyer devoted much of his life to creating imaginative new works for the vast exhibition space that Brasilia presented. A visit to this remarkable capital is like paying homage to his legacy to the world. The city of Merida is the capital of the Mexican state of Yucatan. While much of the peninsula is famed for its resorts, Merida is the epicenter of Yucatan culture, history, and Mayan pride. At the city's heart is Plaza Grande. This relaxed square is surrounded by some of the city's most beautiful buildings, many built from the sun-baked stones of the great Mayan temples which once stood here. Facing the square is Merida's oldest building, Casa de Montejo, built by the city's founding conquistador. Step inside the shady courtyards and lavish interiors of this residence, home of the Montejo dynasty for over 4 centuries. Just across the square rises Merida Cathedral, whose massive altarpiece symbolizes the eventual reconciliation between the Maya and the Spanish peoples. Right next door, discover modern sculptures at the Contemporary Art Museum, which proudly displays works by some of the region's most popular and thought-provoking artists. Radiating from Plaza Grande are pastel streets filled with architectural treasures and cool parks. Just a block away, relax with locals in Hidalgo Park, an oasis surrounded by cafes, restaurants, and charming hotels. Here, it's just a few steps to the José Peón Contreras Theater, the home of the Yucatan Symphony Orchestra. In the late 1800s, Yucatan became the center of Henneken production, and Merida fast became one of the world's wealthiest cities. Take a walk up Paseo de Montejo, an avenue inspired by the great boulevards of Paris. where Yucatan's elite built their stately homes. Pay a visit to Casa Montes Molina, a mansion preserved down to its very last detail, and experience the scents and patinas of a bygone era. Merida is filled with windows into the past, including its many museums, which cover everything from Yucatan song to the folk arts of Mexico. Just a short walk south from Plaza Grande is the Museum of the City of Merida, which charts the rich and sometimes turbulent history of Yucatan's capital. Once the residence of a former governor and general, Palacio Canton is now home to Yucatan's Anthropology and History Museum. While nearby, the Great Museum of the Mayan World creates a striking contrast to Merida's historic streetscapes. The building was inspired by the form of the sacred ceiba tree, which the Maya believed was a bridge to the heavens and the underworld. Inside, its collections are the perfect gateway to a civilization which has long captured the imaginations of explorers and anthropologists. One such adventurer was the Englishman Frederick Catherwood. Step into the explorer's historic residence to see his lithographs of lost Mayan cities, which when published in the 1800s, created a sensation all over the world. When it's time to take your own Mayan adventure, hit the road. Just 10 miles north of Merida are the Tsibilchaltun ruins. Or take the 40-minute drive south to Mayapan, the Mayan capital from the 13th to the 15th centuries. The deeper you venture into Yucatan, the greater the reward. An hour's drive southwest from Mayapan are the hills of Uuk. Here you'll find the incredibly ornate ruins of Uxmal, where the Pyramid of the Magician looms high above the expansive governor's palace. In Yucatan, all roads eventually lead to Chichen Itza, the most famous of all the Mayan cities. Walk across the blood-soaked ball court, where opposing teams literally played for their lives. Wander through a forest of stone at the Court of 1,000 Columns. Then, let your gaze climb the staircase of El Castillo, and you'll soon appreciate why these ancient ruins are considered one of the world's great wonders. The heat and humidity of Yucatan can be fierce, so when the Mexican sun starts to climb, escape underground into the incredible caves of Calcetoc. The Yucatan Peninsula has also been blessed with an incredible network of over 6,000 cenotes. For the ancient Maya, these clear subterranean pools provided water for their cities, and some, such as the sacred cenote of Chichen Itza, were considered portals to the afterlife. Today, many of these cenotes are the perfect place to cool off. But of course, there's nowhere better to wash away the Yucatan dust than back in Merida, one of the most cultural, historic, and coolest cities in all of Mexico.
As the gateway to Argentina's famous wine region, Mendoza is a popular stopover between Buenos Aires and Santiago de Chile. Labeled as the Eden of the Andes, this green city is bursting with flavor. Mendoza is the land of sun and good wine. The Andean city represents what Argentinians do best: enjoying the good life. Here, the glass is always half full, and this optimism is palpable when you explore Mendoza. Set on a dry, sun-kissed plateau in the foothills of the Andes, the city sprouted from an ancient network of irrigation channels dug by the indigenous Huarpe people to water their crops with the snowmelt from the peaks. When the Spanish arrived in the mid-16th century, they adopted these acequias to establish Argentina's first vineyards. In doing so, they planted the seed of Mendoza's future as one of the world's great capitals of wine. Like a vine that is lovingly cultivated, the region's wine industry is thriving. Because the conditions in these mountains are so perfect, Mendoza's vineyards produce about 3/4 of the country's wine. Set in a historic homestead in the original wine-growing region of Mendoza, Bodega Lagarde is as traditional as it gets. Follow your nose to the smoking parrilla on the patio to enjoy a mouth-watering feast. Pair each course with a different drop for unexpected bursts of flavor. Those with sophisticated palates can also book a private wine tasting session at Catena Zapata, run by the descendants of a pioneering wine grower from Italy. The vineyards in its fertile valleys are not the only reason why Mendoza is nicknamed the Eden of the Andes. The city's sunny climate and abundance of shady parks round out its flavors. The most generous park of all is Parque General San Martín, just west of the city center. This massive urban green space is big enough to drive and even row through. Adorning El Cerro de la Gloria, the park's glorious hill, is the national monument for the Army of the Andes. Scenes depict how General San Martín and his troops first liberated Argentina in the early 19th century and then crossed the mountains from here to also liberate Chile and Peru. In the heart of the city center, the Teatro Independencia also serves as a grand memorial to the country's War of Independence from Spain. Don't miss the sculpture under the beautiful dome of the nearby Espacio Contemporáneo de Arte, which is housed in a former bank. This well-lit art space stands in stark contrast to the underground Modern Art Museum, which features acclaimed South American and European artists, and is located right under the central terrace of Plaza Independencia. This pocket of green is the central point of 5 leafy squares that are dotted around the downtown area. Nearby Plaza General San Martín features the general's horseback statue, while the Plaza España features an Iberian fountain, Andalusian benches, and Mayólica murals, which all symbolize the restored relations between Argentina and Spain. Just 4 blocks away is the Plaza Italia with its Romanesque stonework and sculpture. It's a tribute to the social influence of the province's Italian community. When you explore this South American city, it's clear that the people of Mendoza live their lives with gusto and know how to have a good time. So why don't you join them on a bustling cafe terrace along the boulevard at night? Like a good wine, the spirited city of Mendoza has aged beautifully since first sprouting from the foothills of the Andes and has matured into a full-bodied blend with a hint of elegance. Come and get a taste of Mendoza's zest for life by uncorking the city's intoxicating ingredients, which all combined make Mendoza into what it is today, the Eden of the Andes.